how I've historically and continue to sell SaaS, if you will, is celebrate the timeless thing. So if I was going to tell someone about it, even the hook that I did was more so around, hey, we found something really cool. I'd love to show you. So I didn't make it. I invented, I made, I have something I want to sell you. It was around this idea of, hey, I stumbled onto something really cool. I think it would be awesome for you guys. I'd love to show you. So I think that's, for me, that was enough of a hook to get intrigue, especially if you know their context. So I started by asking who in my network could find value from this. And I remember some of the earlier ones were people that had, done an MBA with me and either currently work for a business or own their own business. We're like, oh, this is easier. And so I distilled down to there are people in my network who own a brewery in East LA. I was like, okay, that's easy. That's straightforward. There's people in my network now had a wife that the side hustle was in the jewelry space. Oh, that's great. That's e-com, a little bit different, but I could find and interpret value there. But how I started the conversation was almost like new news that I'm excited about. And it made me think of them because it just comes off a little bit more approachable than, have you thought of
giving me more money?
Yeah. Have you thought of paying me recently? Because they're like, no, that's weird. We're just, we went in class together. Why would I pay you more money?
Right.
So I think the eureka strategy is what I led with, and it tended to get a positive response no matter what. I think then there was the secondary challenge there is urgency. There's no urgency around that. It's kind of like when you get around to it, then you're gonna want to do it. And so I revamped it to my follow-up have some sort of sense, I falsely imposed some sort of time urgency there to see if I could get folks to prioritize it, because initially it was enough to spark some curiosity. They're like, oh, this is an interesting, what could this be about?
Yeah.
But if they're busy, they're not going to prioritize you.
No, the response becomes yeah, I'd love to hear that. Let's grab coffee sometime or something long-term, right? So here's one thing that I've seen with people just getting started. You have this idea where okay, you're not picking a niche, you're just focusing on proximity. Yep. So there's an overwhelm on the back end. How am I going to go fulfill that? That's not a single snapshot. It's not a single thing. How do you balance the, stay in the imperfect action of just go get focus on proximity and not a niche?
For me, I created the false pressure or constraint of consequences for my hair. That's what I did. I said I got to do this. I'm shaving my head and I'm doing everything I can to not shave my head. For other folks, if you really think about it, cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. That is food and water. And so it's natural. It's easy for us in our lives. It's when you get hangry, you're I don't care. I will eat a Snickers. I care nothing about nutrition. I'm hungry. I'm just going to get a Snickers and just satisfy this core need. When you're launching something, for most folks, there's not actually a high enough degree of desperation there. But I think it's possible to do those kind of mental gymnastics to force yourself into this thing where you convince yourself you're operating out of need and you get over yourself. So for me, a good reminder and just a realignment of what I'm willing to do is my kids. I'll do the mental gymnastics and imagine the consequence is not just for myself, but actually for my kids. And then all of a sudden I feel a strength to get over myself to do the thing that feels awkward and feels unnecessarily urgent.
Yeah. And so for you, basically, you're I'm not going to worry about having the perfect snapshot, about having all the back end stuff, because it doesn't matter if you don't have a subscriber, right? You got to start with the real problem, which is, do you have a customer?
It's something born out of habit for me. So it's kind of if I'm not a super buff dude who goes to the gym, but you're asking someone who's got huge arms, what do you do? He's well, you consistently do the same thing that you should be doing, kind of a thing. And so for me, that idea of imperfect action, it is imperfect because the entire throughput has not been designed or even achieved yet. However, I have learned time and time again that it works best when you put appropriate pressure, they cascade down. And so as much as it feels tempting to get things perfectly down the line, I have just done it enough that I feel strangely comfortable. And and Tyler, you've experienced this, where I will openly say, I know there's consequences there. I know we don't have everything buttoned up and tied together. However, I am absolutely fine letting these things move in appropriate order to the point where the consequence will create the pressure.